Hey guys, and welcome to a new episode of Chew on That. So if it's your first time watching, I am your lovely host, Angela Nicole Chew, aka the Angie Chew, and today we are back with an all new true crime story. So I promised you guys last time that there was like a weird coincidence going on where back to back we had episodes featuring young Asian college women who were born to immigrants from Asia, and they both lived in Canada. And I did not do that on purpose. I noticed it while putting up images for the second episode that it was like a back-to-back thing, and I mentioned, you know, this isn't a trend, this is a coincidence. And I told you guys the trend would be broken next time for the story I chosen, and that is true. So today we're going to be talking about the disappearances of KRIS KREMERS and Lisanne Frooon. These are two women from the Netherlands, so completely not Asian. I told you guys that was just a weird coincidence. Before we get started, I do want to say thank you for everyone who's been subscribing to the channel, subscribing to the podcast, checking out the Patreon. It really helps me out. It helps you guys out because then you always know when new episodes are going on. So again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I love doing this. For anyone who doesn't know, I did a different true crime podcast like 3 years ago called True Crime Tea. Ended it, just didn't like how it was going. It was very rigid, it was very new to me, and now with more experience I wanted to jump in and kind of start from the beginning, and I've been having so much fun, especially communicating with you guys. So thank you so much for enjoying Chew on That. And again, do be sure to subscribe so that way you have all of the episodes as soon as they are here. So whether you're listening on a podcast or watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe wherever you're consuming this. And if you're on YouTube, be sure to like and comment when you're done and let me know what you think about the story. Let me know any thoughts you have on the disappearances. I'd love to see what you guys are thinking. So without further ado, this is the disappearances of KRIS KREMERS and Lisanne Frooon. So of course, credit where credit is due. I'm a one-woman band at this point. I'm doing all the research and writing the script and recording and editing and producing and mixing and uploading and advertising and all that stuff, but I put my name on here so if there's ever a variation, you guys will know and it won't be out of place. And I always like to put what equipment I'm using, so I'm using an iPhone 11 as a camera. I'm recording with Switcher Studio, and then I'm doing post-production editing with Vegas Pro 13. So that is my entourage. So sweet beginnings. This is the story of KRIS KREMERS and Lisanne Frooon. So when this takes place, KRIS is 21, Lisanne is 22. For you guys watching on YouTube, you see the picture right now. KRIS is the one with kind of the long strawberry hair on the left, and Lisanne is the one with the ponytail on the right. So they grew up as friends together, starting in elementary school, going all through college from Amersfoot in the Netherlands. I'm just going to go ahead and say I'm not great at Dutch pronunciation, so if I just completely butchered their city, I'm really sorry. But Amersfoot is how I'm saying it right now. It's in the Netherlands. We know that part I'm saying right. But yeah, they went to college together. They graduated at the same time. KRIS got her degree in cultural social education, and Lisanne got hers in applied sciences. So like most people when they graduated, when they were done, they wanted to celebrate. And this is something pretty typical. Most people do something to celebrate after they graduate. They throw a big party or they travel or whatever. So Lisanne and KRIS definitely wanted to do this, and they wanted to kind of up the ante. Instead of just a fun trip, they also wanted it to be educational and, you know, charitable. So they saved up their money for 6 months, and then they decided they would go to Panama. They wanted to volunteer with children, and they would also take it as the opportunity to learn Spanish, to pick up another language and start getting a good grasp on it, because they would be there for such a long length of time. So they arrived in Panama on March 15th, 2014 for a 6-week stay. So, you know, they had some time in the beginning to themselves to explore, you know, the area, and then they would be doing their volunteer work with children after. So the first 2 weeks were just to tour Panama. The pictures you guys are seeing right now are pictures that they took with Lisanne's camera that they were uploading to Facebook of their trip. And after that 2 weeks, they went to Boquette in Panama on March 29th, 2014, and this is where they would be staying for 1 month to volunteer with the children. And they chose a host family. They stayed with the host family together, so that way they had a full experience. Instead of being in a hotel, they had, you know, native people from Panama there, so they were eating the food, experiencing the culture, everything like that. Just heads in, you know, for a great time on this trip. And they loved it. They loved what they were doing, but they also loved exploring Panama. So on April 1st, 2014, and this is not an April Fool's joke. I know it's April 1st, but it's not an April Fool's joke. The girls left for a hike at 11 a.m. and they took the host family's pet dog Blue with them. And they're like, you know, we love going on hikes. Let's go on an additional hike. And they even posted on Facebook, you know, we're taking a hike. They posted a couple of photos, so people knew what was going on. This was nothing out of the blue for these girls. They grew up this way, and they planned on just taking a quick, you know, hour, 2-hour hike and coming back. But the problem is that when the host family got back several hours later, the girls were not there. And this was a little strange. You know, they had been really good about explaining where they would be so far, but Boone, quit. The girls had been really good at explaining where they were going to be, when they'd be gone, when they'd be back. But they'd only been there for like 3 days at this point. So the host family was like, you know, let's give them some time. Maybe the first couple of days were just them being overly courteous. And when they get back, they'll be completely fine. So the host family waited and waited and waited. But the girls and Blue had not come back. And when it hits nightfall and the host family's getting really worried, like, and kind of pissed off, like, where are they at? Where is our dog? Blue just wanders back in without the girls. Like, Blue has just been walking by. I didn't see what gender Blue was, so like his or herself had been walking through and came home without the girls. So Lisanne's parents by this point were also worried. The girls had been in communication very frequently with their family and friends. Lisanne communicated with her family through WhatsApp, and they both would post on Facebook. And neither of them had posted since they mentioned they were going on a hike. And also, Lisanne's parents had not heard from her, and they figured she'd at least check in and say, hi, I'm back from my hike. So people started to get a little bit worried. But again, they're trying to give these girls their freedom. They're, you know, recent college graduates. They're smart girls. They're, you know, very intelligent. And they're like, let's see what happens when they get back, hear their story, and then we'll talk to them. But the next morning, the girls are supposed to go on another tour with a tour guide at 8 a.m. So this is April 2nd, no longer April Fool's Day. And I mean, it's bright and early, it's 8 a.m., but the girls were very reliable, very punctual, and they failed to show up to this tour. So the tour guide knew the host family. They called the host family like, hey, you know, are the girls still asleep? You know, what's going on? And the host family reveals that the girls had never shown up the night before. So the tour guide and another woman who was with the tour guide went to the police station, just let them know, hey, there's these 2 girls that are here from the Netherlands. They went on a hike yesterday with their host family's dog. The dog came back at night without them. No one's heard from the girls. They have no social media presence, no contact, you know, with their families or anything. No one knows where they are, and they didn't show up for our tour today. They might be missing. And police wanted to give it some more time. You know, again, these are people exploring a new area, very independent. They're like, let's see what happens. Let's see if they turn up at some point today. Maybe they decide to camp and just overslept on a campsite. So another 24 hours goes on. We're hitting the 48-hour mark at this point, and April 3rd arrives, and there's still no, sign or sound of KRIS KREMERS and Lisanne Frooon. And the police are like, okay, this is a problem. Like, these people are here internationally on a volunteer trip with children, and we cannot find them. So they declare KRIS and Lisanne missing persons, and they start performing aerial searches over the forest starting at 8 a.m. on April 3rd. So very quickly, they're like, we need to find these missing students. We're not just gonna dilly-dally. We're gonna go ahead and jump in. They've been missing for 2 days. Of course, with all of these, choppers and stuff overhead, a lot of the locals and the farmers start asking what's going on, and they hear that these girls are missing as well. So they start searching for them on foot to see if they can find the missing girls that way, just through the jungle, through the hiking paths, while there's choppers overhead. But still, there's no sign of the girls. They continue searching for a few days, and eventually on April 6th, the Kremerses and the Froons flew into Panama. So, they wanted to come right away, but they had to find transportation and, everything like that. It's hard to just pack up and go halfway around the world to a different country. So, I know two episodes ago, we discussed Elisa Lamb. Her parents flew down the next day. And I just want to let you guys know, the Kremerses and the Froons were still just as concerned as the Lambs. It's just the Lambs were flying from Vancouver to LA, which is a lot easier than flying from the Netherlands to Panama. So they had more stuff to juggle around, but they did come there to help look for their missing girls. They also, part of what took them so long, arranged for special forces and dog unit detectives from the Netherlands to come with them. So they came with an entourage to help them search. They're like, we want to find our girls ASAP. We are going to bring the best of the best from our area as well to help the detectives in Panama look for KRIS and Lisanne. So a 10-day search continues out from here through April 16th, 2014, and sadly, the girls were not located. So they've been missing for 16 days at this point. A reward, the equivalent of $30,000 US, was issued for anyone who could help find the girls, like anyone with any information, which is a lot of money in Panama. That's like, it's a lot of money anywhere, but it's a ton of money in Panama. And no one's really seen these girls. Like, everything just kind of stalls out. Everyone's getting really frustrated. It's like, what happened to KRIS and Lisanne? They just disappeared, and people start looking at some of the locals, like people of interest. They start looking for any kind of fresh earth to see if, maybe they were dug up somewhere. But the problem is this is a jungle territory, so it's really hard to search, especially because the girls were hiking on what's called the Continental Divide. And so you have the east side and the west side, and the west side is where they should be. That's where it leads into Boquette. It's common for tourists to hike it. It's pretty easy to hike it. But then the east side is very treacherous. Even locals who know the area will sometimes slip and fall to their deaths trying to hike the east side to get to the villages. There's a lot of like rope bridges you have to go across. So it was very hard to look through those jungles to see if the girls would show up anywhere. So, people don't give up, but life has to kind of regulate back. So the Froons and the Kremers have to kind of go back and forth between the Netherlands and Panama. Detectives are still looking, but not as intensely as when they started. You know, it's kind of starting to come into a cold case, which is a problem. But then 10 weeks later, a local woman finds a blue backpack by a riverbank near her village, and she opens it up and sees there's a lot of valuable stuff in here. Like, it's not just some random bag. She's like, this is some really good stuff. So she turns it into the authorities, like, hey, someone lost this backpack. It's no one in my villages. You know, you might want to see if you can hold on to it, and whoever lost it comes in to claim it. So authorities opened it up, and they found 2 pairs of cheap sunglasses, $83 in cash, Lisanne's passport, a water bottle, a Canon PowerShot camera that had a ton of pictures on it, including the ones you guys have seen so far, 2 of Lisanne's bras, Lisanne's Samsung Galaxy cell phone, and Chris's iPhone 4 cell phone. So again, this is valuable stuff that, you know, a lot of people would want to take and sell, and instead it's just sitting in this backpack, very well preserved. It's dry. It's, you know, not in the water or anything. It's like out of the water. It just kind of like tumbled there. Like, there's a lot of heavy rains in Panama, so it easily could have gotten washed around and put somewhere until this woman came across it, and they quickly realized this is Lisanne Froon's backpack. They had found her backpack. So since everything was dry, they start looking into it, and they find the phones still work, which is great because the phones hold a lot of info. So they pull the logs on both of their phones, and what they realize is that both phones had been putting in calls to both the police in Panama as well as to the police in Netherlands during the first few days they were missing. And they start looking into the key codes and how the phones were being used, and what they found with the PIN numbers was very disturbing. So for you guys watching on YouTube, I have this handy dandy little chart up right now that actually shows the dates and what phone did what. I will also, of course, narrate this for you for anyone listening, both on YouTube and on podcast. So on April 1st, both phones attempted to make a call. And KRIS tried hers first. She tried her iPhone at 4:39 p.m. She ended up calling 112, which is the Netherlands distress number. About 10 minutes later, Lisanne used her Samsung Galaxy, and she tried making a call. And unfortunately, what happened with both of these is the calls could not connect because they are in the jungle. They did not have cell signal. So they're trying to make these calls, and they're just not going anywhere. So the next day, April 2nd, bright and early in the morning, Lisanne tries again at 6:58 a.m. She tries again at 10:53, and this time she calls the Netherlands number, but also 911 for the Panama number. So she's called both emergency numbers at this point, and unfortunately, nothing goes through still. She tries again at 1:56 p.m. She tries both numbers, and this time when she dials 911, there is a very short connection to the emergency line. She managed to get a very slight signal and get through, but she couldn't hear anyone. It only stayed connected for just a few seconds, so not long enough to ping a location, say help, anything like that. So very, very frustrating. A few hours after that, KRIS tried. She dialed 112 at 6:14 p.m., and that one would not connect either. The next day, things are getting a little more dire, and the girls are turning off their phones between these calls. I want to point out, so they're being smart. They're trying to preserve battery, especially I've not used a Galaxy. I've been an iPhone user, but I remember how crappy the iPhone 4 battery life is, and I'm assuming the Galaxy was about the same. So, you know, turn the phone on, see if you get a signal, turn it off. Don't drain the battery, especially when you're not in a signal zone. So April 3rd at 9:33 a.m., KRIS tries dialing 911, doesn't go through. After that, the girls don't try dialing anymore. They're kind of fed up with trying to dial these numbers and not getting anywhere. So at 1:50 p.m., Lisanne just checks for signal, just turns on her Galaxy and checks for a signal. No signal can be found. At 4 p.m., KRIS tries the same thing, checks for a signal, nothing. And 19 minutes later at 4:19 p.m., Lisanne tries for a signal and nothing. And that's all that happens on the 3rd. On the 4th, there is a signal check from KRIS's phone at 10:16 a.m. and then there's another at 1:42 p.m. And on this day, on April 4th, there's no activity whatsoever from Lisanne's Samsung Galaxy. So KRIS just does 2 signal checks, one in the late morning, one in the early afternoon, and that's it. April 5th is when things get even more dire. So remember, this is the 5th day these girls are out here. They didn't really bring anything with them. They planned on doing a quick hike, and they can't get a hold of anyone, and they're lost somewhere. So at 4:50 a.m., Lisanne turns on her Samsung Galaxy, checks for signal, nothing. And she turns it on again at 5:56 a.m. And when she turns it on, she gets the notification that her battery is dead, and no further activity takes place on this phone, like, ever. Until the authorities find it and they turn it on to try to figure out what happened. So Lisanne did not use her phone on the 4th because she knew it was dying, and she tried again on the 5th, and the second time she turned it on, you know, before even 6 a.m., that thing is dead. So we're down to one phone, ladies and gentlemen. So at 10:50 a.m. and at 1:37 p.m., KRIS's iPhone 4 turns on to check for signal. Still nothing. So they haven't been making calls anymore. They're just trying to get signal. So there's 2 more days I want to talk to you guys about. On April 6th, remember, the Galaxy's dead. Lisanne's phone will not turn on. We're down to KRIS's phone. KRIS's phone turns on at 10:26. It checks for signal, but they notice that the PIN number being entered is incorrect. So someone is trying to put in a PIN. They're trying different combinations. They're locking the phone over and over. They can't get in to the phone. And this is weird because both girls have been getting into their phones like normal. And suddenly it's like KRIS has forgotten her PIN number. And at 1:37, there's another signal check. And this time no PIN is entered. It's just, you know, trying to find a signal, because with an iPhone, even if you don't enter the PIN, you can still do an emergency dial. So the PIN wasn't really needed, you know, at that point, as long as they hit the emergency dial button. But still, it's weird. It's like, why does KRIS not know her PIN? And then there's 5 days without using either phone. So one phone's dead, the other phone, the PIN's not working. They're not entering the right PIN. And on April 11th, at 10:51 a.m., the signal was checked again. No PIN was entered. Like, they didn't try an incorrect PIN or anything. Just no PIN was entered. And then at 11:56 a.m., the phone came on again to check for a signal. And this time the phone stayed on for an hour and 5 minutes, which was abnormal. They normally didn't leave the phones on this long. So they left the phone on for an hour and 5 minutes, and then they turned the phone off, and that was the last time KRIS's phone ever came on. So KRIS's phone didn't die, it's just it never turned back on, whereas Lisanne's phone had been dead for a bit. So this really tells an interesting story, and helps investigators put together some of the pieces. But what helps with this as well is Lisanne's camera. So she's got that nice Canon PowerShot that she's been taking all these photos with, and they start going through her pictures. So on April 1st, they're seeing, you know, all these pictures of them hiking at the Continental Divide. They're seeing the trail they were on, you know, all these happy smiley pictures that, you know, are all over the internet of these 2 girls where they're just having fun on their hike. You know, they don't realize what's about to happen to them, that they're about to disappear. And then the camera stays off, and no more pictures are taken until April 8th. So remember, this is in between that stretch of time where Chris's phone is coming on and off, but the pin's not right. So April 6th is when suddenly someone can't access it with the pin. These photos we're about to talk about happened on April 8th, and then April 11th is the last time someone turned on KRIS Kremers' phone. So on April 8th, there were 90 pictures taken with the flash between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. and they were done at a rate of about 1 every 2 minutes. So very strategic, very rhythmic, very creepy. And most were taken deep in the jungle in almost complete darkness, which is why the flash was required for these. So a few of these photos were near a river or a ravine. And then there were some weird setups as well. So there's one where it shows a twig with some plastic bags and candy wrappers attached to it that's sitting on top of a rock. And investigators are like, what is this? Like, what is this twig? There's another picture that showed toilet paper and a mirror. And then there was a concerning one that shows the back of Chris's head with what appears to be blood on her temple. And for those of you watching on YouTube, you can see in this picture in the top left corner, it's not really graphic, but it does show some blood that's kind of staining that strawberry blonde hair that she has. So what investigators think these are landmarks that have been made. So this weird twig thing is a landmark. The toilet paper, thank God they brought toilet paper. Thank God it wasn't 2020's toilet paper shortage. They brought, that was a landmark left out somewhere. The mirror, they're thinking, was used to try to reflect the sun. So like if a plane was flying overhead, they could try to signal to someone up above, like, hey, come down here, there's someone down here. Especially since there were extra aircraft up there looking for them, and they probably realized, like, hey, there's people looking for us. So they're trying to reflect with the mirror. And then the picture of Chris's head to show something has happened to Chris. And remember, that pin for the phone stopped working on the 6th. These pictures were taken on the 8th. So if Chris was in some way incapacitated and Lisanne was using her phone, which is what's believed to have happened, of course she wouldn't know the PIN number. Like, most people don't know each other's PIN number, even if they're best friends. Like, I think the only people who know my PIN are one of my best friends and my husband. And that's because I don't like to text and drive. So if I'm driving and I need them to do something, I'm like, here, take my phone. But, you know, it's normal for people not to know your PIN number. And we know they're super close friends, but we don't know if they're share your PIN number type friends. So investigators see these pictures, they see the call logs, and they start to piece together a story. Just to try to build it up more, they go to search the area where the local woman found the backpack, and they start asking around in her village of anything else that's been seen that's weird for like the past 12 weeks. And one woman reports that she had found a pair of jean shorts a while back that were folded neatly and placed on a rock. And the investigators are like, do you have these shorts? She says yes. And they look, and they're Chris's shorts. They're in good condition. And they ask her, where did she find the shorts? And they had been placed like oddly on just like this little rock area. And they realized the way they were placed and the timing of it was around the same time this other weird stuff had been placed around for the pictures around April 8th. So it's believed that, I mean, it's normal to have like a couple extra clothes with you when you're hiking in case you're going to get wet or something. That these were an extra pair of shorts that were just left there as a landmark. You know, Lisanne had 2 extra bras in her bag. So it's not out of the question that Chris also had extra stuff and her bag was just not discovered. And again, the shorts were just a few kilometers away from where the backpack was. So they're starting to put together this picture of the girls got lost. Something happened to the girls. An injury most likely. Because remember I told you there's that east side, west side of the Continental Divide. And all this stuff was on the treacherous side by the villages. So the girls somehow most likely accidentally went the wrong way. They might have intentionally tried to go the other way, and they got stuck, and KRIS got hurt, and they were trapped out here. Even if Lisanne wasn't hurt and KRIS wasn't dead, it would be hard to carry someone else from a treacherous place back to the village. And if you don't know back to Boquette, and if you don't know where you are, you're probably going to get lost as well. And so 2 months after this, so we're hitting about August at this point, investigators make a gruesome discovery. So these are actual pictures, again, not graphic, but a little unsettling for what they are. So where the backpack had been discovered, they start finding some other things. So they find a boot that still has a foot in it. It's a skeletized foot, but there is a foot in the boot. They find a pelvic bone, and they also find 33 smaller bones just scattered around. So, you know, these bones are collected. They search the area to make sure they found everything. They send them to the experts in the Netherlands, and it's confirmed that these are the remains of KRIS Kremers and Lisanne Frooon. So at this point, the girls are deceased, and they are not in one piece at this point. It's determined that the foot in the boot was Lisanne's. DNA proved it was her foot and her boot. The pelvis was KRIS's, and of the 33 smaller bones, 28 were Lisanne's and 5 were KRIS's. A lot of Lisanne's bones still had skin attached to them, like little traces of skin attached, whereas KRIS's bones were completely clean and appeared to have been bleached by the sun. So this evidence is thrown in with the photos, with the phone calls, with the testimony from villagers, with all of the strange things that were found, like the shorts, and they conclude, you know, what they believe happened and what's most likely to have happened. And, you know, this is a case where some people say, you know, they think it's a murder or something, but it's one of those where, unfortunately, when you put the pieces together, you never know with 100% certainty, but you can kind of figure out what happened. So the girls went on a hike to the Continental Divide. They accidentally got turned around, went the wrong way, went the treacherous way. You know, they were unable to call for help because of poor cell reception. Either before or after they tried to call, KRIS got injured, so that doesn't help matters any to get back. You know, KRIS became, you know, probably deceased around the 8th or so. They believe the pictures were to show a trace back to her body for Lisanne to go and get help. And then Lisanne probably perished around the 11th when she left the phone on one final time for over an hour, just hoping for a signal. And they likely died from starvation and exposure to the elements. So it was a super rainy season, lots of rain, lots of wind. They didn't have much to eat, so just a bad place to get lost. And then because of this, the river and wildlife scattered their bones. So remember how the bones were found, where KRIS's had been sun bleached and were picked clean, and Lisanne's had some skin attached. So what they're thinking is that Lisanne's body ended up in the bank, probably floated down the river some, and you know, because of the exposure to the water and bouncing around the bank, it just kind of started falling apart, and that's why we got so many small bones from her, as well as that foot where, not to gross you guys out, but it just kind of snapped. And they saw when they checked it that foot had been fractured, so likely when she was trying to get help, she got injured, fractured her foot, and that's how the whole foot came off. For KRIS's body, they believe Lisanne left her somewhere where she could be found easily. So if Lisanne got to freedom, she could bring people back for KRIS or tell people how to come back and get KRIS. And since she was on land, not only could the sun bleach her body, but animals could easily get around to it. And aquatic wildlife would get to Lisanne's, but you know, whatever animals are in Panama, I don't want to start naming like squirrels and raccoons and those not be in Panama, but those animals got to KRIS, and that's why her bones were picked clean. So this right here is a picture of some of those rope bridges I mentioned. This is not like your typical let's have fun rope bridge. You know, this is death. This is very bad. This is why people who are born and raised here have problems here. And it's easy to see how trying to cross one of these, both girls became injured very, very quickly. It's literally 3 pieces of rope that you have to balance yourself with, and there's nothing to catch you but your own like arms. Like, this is not a good scenario. And again, you know, with how hot Panama was, it was spring, but it's Panama, it's the equator. You know, that's going to cause that quick decomposition. So even though this is like a 3-4 month period, you know, the exposure to this heat combined with treacherous rains, a river, and wildlife both in the river and outside of it, the bodies just didn't really stand a chance at that point. So this case is officially a cold case, but they also consider it closed. Again, no one really knows what happened, but most people believe this is the correct turn of events and that there wasn't any foul play, there was no one murdering them or chasing them or anything. There's still plenty of those conspiracy theories on the internet that you guys can see if you search this case, but anything reputable, including what the families believe, is they accidentally got lost, they got injured, they perished. It's a tragedy, especially for 2 girls with such bright futures, had just finished college, were there to volunteer with kids, and this is what happened to them on just a short hike. And for those of you watching on YouTube, you can see this picture that shows, you know, the West Bank and Boquette, as well as the East Bank where the girls most likely crossed over, and it caused a lot of their issues. So yeah, very, very tragic case. Kind of the moral of this is always be aware of your surroundings. There were signs warning people not to cross over to the East Bank, but they can be easy to miss depending on where you're trying to cross. Also remember, they were going there to learn Spanish, so if these signs were in Spanish and they saw it, they probably didn't know what the sign meant, and you know, easily could have crossed over and gotten confused. So of course, you know, it's been, oh god, 7 years now. It's hard. It just hit New Year's here, so I'm having these things where when I do year math in my head, it's weird to kind of switch it back over, but it's been 7 years. But you know, still want to give my condolences to the Froons and to the Kremers families. Of course, this is a huge tragedy. This is something they never thought when their girls said we're going to go volunteering for 6 weeks. This is every parent's worst nightmare. The only solace is, you know, no one murdered them, no one took their life from them. It was just a horrible, tragic mistake. But that is the case of KRIS Kremers and Lisanne Frooon. So I do want to thank you guys for tuning into this video. Next week's episode is going to be interesting because it's a new one even for me. I didn't know this was a thing until 2 nights ago. So you guys might know I do a podcast for the challenge called Bananas Toast Podcast with my co-host Papa D, who I have known for over a decade, and he's obsessed with TikTok, and he found this video. There's like a serial killers of TikTok trend, and one got recommended to him about the Muffin Man, and everyone knows the song, you know, do you know the Muffin Man, the Muffin Man, the Muffin Man? So everyone knows that. Apparently it was a song meant as a warning to kids to stay away from the Muffin Man who lives on Drury Lane. because dude was a serial killer. And at first I didn't fully believe him, and I Googled it, and it's true. So I'm hoping to do a full deep dive, probably tomorrow or Monday, and get all the deets on what's going on, and hopefully have enough for a full-length episode, because I really want to learn about the story. And of course, if I'm going to learn about it, I want to bring it to you guys too, because a lot of you guys probably don't realize this. And it's just weird how many kids' songs and poems are actually really twisted and demented when you learn about them, like Ring Around the Rosie and stuff. So I'm gonna say with like 95% certainty, because it really depends on what info is out there. Next week's episode will be about the real life Muffin Man who lived on Drury Lane. And if I don't have enough info, I'll probably do like a short, like 10-minute mini episode for you guys, and then do something full length after that. We'll have to see. But again, you guys can catch all of the Chew on That episodes, plus the bonus story time episodes, the vlogs. I am very pregnant right now. I pretty much at an any day now point, so vlogs on parenting and stuff will be coming through as well. But be sure to subscribe so that you guys get all of that the second it's released. And also, you know, let me know what you guys think about this case. Do you think it was a tragic accident what happened to KRIS and Lisanne, or do you think there was foul play? And if you do think there's foul play, make sure to put why. And if you found an article that's really cool about why it's foul play, post that in there as well, because I love reading the opposition. I'm not, you know, oh my god, you're wrong, this was an accident. I do believe it was an accident, but I'm open to reading these other theories as well. There's some really interesting stuff, because again, this is a technically unsolved cold case that will probably never be solved. So, you know, there's nothing wrong with additional education. But again, you guys are awesome. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next time, my Chewsters. Bye-bye.